Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop. You might be here because you've gotten your laser and you've run some material tests and now you're wanting to move on to something a little more real. Well, one thing I suggest people do is work on some small puzzles. There's some tools out there that I'm going to show you that can allow you to set up the puzzle diagram, and then you can import your own artwork or your own vector graphics to make little conversation pieces or gifts to hand out to people. So we're going to walk through the steps of actually setting up the file, running it into the laser, and just some things to check along the way. So if that's something that interests you, just stay tuned. We're going to jump right into it.
All right, so let's jump into Lightburn and start setting up our files. So we're going to be dealing with kind of two aspects of this. First, the overall artwork of the puzzle. That can be anything from a photo that you want to engrave to some clip art artwork that maybe you have the rights to. Whether it's a gift, whether it's something you're going to use yourself or something you're trying to sell, be a responsible maker. Make sure you have the permission and the rights to be using whatever artwork you are working with. You don't want to dabble into trademark and copyright infringement. So whether you're purchasing it somewhere, make sure you have commercial rights to that rather than just personal rights. Or the best bet is to always just create your own. So I have some sample artwork we're going to import here. And this is just an SVG of a tiger. And we are going to be working with this. This is going to be just a simple fill. And I like this because it's fairly square, so it's going to fill up our puzzle pretty well. So first thing we want to do is we're going to resize this. Now, I'm going to be working with about a 5-inch square or about 127 millimeter. One little trick up here, if you're not used to switching from imperial and metric, the Lightburn will do it for you. So a lot of our lasers, they're dealing in metric units, but sometimes you might be visualizing and thinking in inches. So, all right, so one thing you can do is you can utilize this button up here. This changes your units without reconfiguring anything in your artwork and such. So if I click it now, well, we're in metric, you'll notice it switches over to inches. So here we're seeing the hash marks for the various grids at the various lines, and then over here, instead of being our metric measurement, it's switched to inches. So this can just kind of help, one of the tools to help you with your conversions. And so if I want to size this down to be no more than 5 inches square, I'm going to want to take my widest measurement here, and that's going to be the height, and make sure your aspect ratio is locked. Just highlight this, type in 5, and that will automatically resize it and keep it locked. Now see if we jump back to millimeters, now it's at 127 wide. I'm actually going to want to drop this down just a little bit because I want the overall puzzle to be 5 inches wide, so I'm going to take this down to 115 millimeters, which will just size it down a little bit. So there we go, we have that, and we also want to make sure this is grouped. So this SVG is not grouped, and when I bring in the puzzle pieces, I don't want to be messing with the two, so I'm going to go ahead and right click and group. Now if we click on anything, it will select them all. All right, one final thing I'm going to do is just jump this onto a different layer. There we go. Got that set up for our speeds. Now remember, your speeds for both cutting and engraving are going to be dependent on you running a cut test. So utilize the tools within Lightburn or use some of the tools that are out there to do a material test to find your optimal cutting and engraving speeds for every material you'll cut. It's going to be different. Even if you have the same laser as someone else, you might be close, but you'll find that your environment and your laser will do different. So run your material test first, then you'll have your numbers to bring over in here for the file. Right, we're going to jump over into our web browser, and there's this page that I've got linked down below, and this is a jigsaw puzzle generator. It allows you to make adjustments in a variety of different things. So you've got your seed, which is just basically randomization of the puzzle itself. So you can opt there. You can then also adjust your tab size. So if you want the tabs really small versus really big, you can change that as well. And you can also change the jitter, which kind of changes how skewed the pieces are versus how tight and right angled they are. So you see there, we've got much more wavy corners at different angles. All the way to the other side, they're almost all at 90-degree angles. So you can play around with that if that matters to you. The important things we want to look at are the size initially, and then you can also from there adjust the number of tiles you want. So as I said, we are dealing with about a 5-inch square, so we're going to want 127 millimeters by 127 millimeters. There we go. And that would make a ton of very small tiles. So what I'm going to do is say I want, let's try 6 by 6. And so there you can see they're fairly uniform. They should not have any one piece without any artwork on it, because blank tiles are the bane of every puzzle solver out there. So play with this, play with your number of tiles, play with your size, and you can even up the radius of the corners if you want to have them a little more round or a little more sharp to get the puzzle you want. Once you're happy with this layout, all you need to do is click on download SVG. Okay, we're going to jump back into Lightburn, and we need to import the puzzle file that we created off the website. So you're going to want to use your import tool. You're going to browse to where that was saved to. In our case, it was just named Jigsaw 1. And we will import that. I'm going to move it off to the side for a second here so we can look at it better. Now you'll see it does come in 3 different colors, which does help us with our layered settings in Lightburn. And so we've got red vertical, blue horizontal, and black outline. And what we want to do is first get these all in order, because we don't want the outside to cut first. We actually want that to cut last. And the vertical and horizontal don't matter which order, but it is nice that it is doing it individually this way, because if you had these all one color, the laser might just start going all over, and then pieces could start falling out in the middle before other lines are going by. It's just nice to group these in a way that your cuts will be as clean as possible. Now, another thing that's nice about these different layers is that you can actually set these cut lines to have very different variables. So, you know, if you have a not so square focal point and you know that your horizontal versus vertical lines cut hotter than that, you can adjust your settings to go slower or maybe make more passes. And the more passes is actually an option, and I'll show you that. So if we want these blue lines, we can go into our settings, and we have our 300 millimeters a minute and 100% power that we've sorted out with our test files. But if we know that we want to have extra passes on, say, our horizontals, because that happens to be with the grain of the wood, or you know that that's the thinner part of your beam doesn't quite cut as well, you can bump up just, make the horizontal take 2 passes, but you know the vertical ones tend to cut cleanly. You can change the number of passes. Another reason would be is if you don't have air assist and you want to move faster and make more passes as to leave less overburn, you can adjust that in here. So, you know, as you're setting up your files, as you're testing Lightburn to see what works best, and what works best might not be what's fastest. It's, you know, fastest in the cut job, but what is the most efficient for you throughout the job. So that might be, you can cut it faster, but it leaves a lot of overburn. You might want to slow down the cut, make more passes so that there's less cleanup afterwards. So just some things to play with to really dial in your laser settings. So we're looking at the speed, the power, and then the number of passes here. So once you have that set, we can go adjust the order. Like I said, we want the blue and the red inside lines to cut first. Then, so we're going to want to move this black layer down. So if we highlight this layer and move it down, then this, the way we have it set up is that it should cut this last. And so it's going to start with the engraving, it's going to move to our inside lines, and then it's going to finally do the black outside lines. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to get these two centered. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to group this one together. We're going to go ahead and right click on it. We're going to select all, dragging our box around it, and then we're going to right click, we're going to hit group. Now that means when I click on this, it's going to move it as one object. Same thing's been done over here earlier, so all we're going to do is we're going to drag a box around both, select them both, and we're going to come up to this top tool, and this is align both vertical and horizontal centers. What this will do is center the two objects together. So I'm just going to simply click on that. It's going to move the tiger into the puzzle pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and just recenter this. And we're just about ready to go, but the one last final thing I want to do is we can double check our artwork. And so we could probably bump this out a little bit, and so, you know, you can move it via your corners and it's going to stay uniform because we've got our lock up there to keep the aspect ratio. But you see it's kind of moving from one corner to another. I'm going to undo this. Now, if you just simply hold the control key and drag it, now it's going to adjust it evenly from the centers. So we can just kind of play with this a little bit, get it closer to filling up the boxes and all the tiles without quite going to the edges. So we're going to go right about there. That fills out our image and our tiles. And we're ready to send this to the laser, so let's jump back into the shop and get this cut out.
Okay, we're going to be running this on 3mm Baltic birch plywood. That gives us a fairly stable wood, usually engraves pretty well, and so that's my material choice. But choose what you have on hand that you know you can cut through and engrave on, and just have fun with it. So let's get this loaded in the laser, and we'll get it framed up and ready to burn.
Okay, so now that we've got our puzzle done and cut, there's one more thing we want to do. I found that it's nice to have a tray to hold these in. So we're going to take the existing file that we have and we're going to remove some elements from it. Namely, we really just want the outline. So we can actually select all of those items, delete them. We want our outline. And we're going to cut two different shapes from here. So we want the outline and we're going to offset this by 1 inch. So we're going to come over here to our offset tool. We're going to go outward. Go 12 millimeters. Since that's what we're working in. Get about 1 inch. Hit OK. So this is going to give us a tray. And then if we just simply take this, copy it. Group these here, start copy. Now we'd have a base. What we'll do is we will cut out just this flat piece and then just this outer piece, do that on top, and that'll give us a little tray to put our puzzle in and hold it together, because I've found that if you leave it just loose, it gets a little annoying because there's nowhere to, it's hard to hold on to. So you can also embellish this. You could add, some text or some engravings around the outside if you want. We're just going to keep it simple this time, but you get the idea of how you can personalize this a little bit. So now let's go ahead and cut this out on the laser and test it all out.
Oh, we got a couple spots we got to cut out. This is just indicative of plywood. You'll get these little areas. That's why sometimes it's best to run it twice, or run a razor blade. That one came out pretty clean, but you get this little nub, and then we'll take an X-Acto blade to these other two. Luckily these are with the grain, so they'll be easy to finish off. But yeah, you can tell this is just a hard piece of glue. And that's just the nature with some plywoods. So when it doesn't cut all the way through, it's not always that your laser's messing up, it's just the material. So you can either recut it if it needs to be perfect, or you do this, finish it out. Like I said, the only issue is you don't quite get that charred look all the way around it, which may or may not be important to you, depending on how you're finishing your work. But keep it in mind as you're working on jobs, you're going to have some errors like this that have to be dealt with and or just recut. Alright, so here's the idea of it, is we're going to laminate these two together like so. So I'm going to take some CA glue. You could use wood glue or Elmer's glue. This is just faster. And for something like this, doesn't really need a lot of structure, so CA glue will work just fine. So do that. Just to speed things up, we're going to use a little accelerator. And then we will very quickly position this back on the edges before the accelerator kicks in. Just kind of make sure it's all lined up. Important thing is to try not to use so much glue that you get beads in the inside, which we didn't. That's all good to go. So now we should be able to fit our puzzle in. I'll try to bring this in chunks as best I can. So that should fit in there, side to side, because the kerf should leave just enough gap to be snug but loose enough to be able to get things in and out. And there you have it. We have our puzzle made from Baltic birch plywood and made a tray and a frame to boot. This makes it really handy to give out as gifts, having sitting around on the coffee table as a conversation piece, and have fun with it. You know, this is a great way to practice getting used to your laser with both cutting and engraving, and a simple thing to hand out to people. So I hope you found this enjoyable and educational. That's my goal around here, is to just kind of spread some ideas and make these laser machines and workshop machines more approachable to people. So we will have more to come on both projects as well as equipment, new equipment coming to the shop, new things to try out. So if you enjoy what you're seeing here, leave a comment, hit that like button, and if you want to see what I do next, definitely subscribe so you don't miss out. So I hope you get some chance to get out into your workspace and create something, and we will see you next time.